The veteran was cold and hungry. His knees hurt like hell. The bane of all infantrymen's arthritis had not chosen to simply walk past. He was a proud man, a hardened warrior. He fought for his brothers who stood beside him and lost them all. The veteran loved his country to bits, but after returning home, battered and with his mind bruised by the horrors of battle and loss, he found out that not everything was what he thought. The VA didn't help much. Chock full of greed and incompetent bureaucrats. It sucked the taxpayers' dollars, but did little to return any ease of pain for their sons and daughters who were returning in droves from the distant battlefields. The veteran was kneeling in the cold and on the busy streets holding a plaque that he and his wife wrote the evening before. He was ashamed that he had to do this. To beg for other people's money was not the way he did things in life, but his child was in need of basic things like baby formula and diapers. The man who ran towards the fire without a second thought was now reduced to a beggar. In his own country that he spilled his blood to defend and his friends died for, he stood outside, lonely and all soaking wet, sitting on the pavement. The young man walked past, holding in his hand a smartphone and a coffee cup. The veteran gulped heavily as his parched throat was hurting, and since he had nothing to drink in hours, "Sir, could you spare $1?" Again, he swallowed his pride and tried asking the passer-by for money. The youth turned around, startled, and gazed at him and his sign, mouth gaping and hands shaking. The veteran could see now that he wore a red t-shirt saying, "Smash the cis-white patriarchy," with a hammer and sickle in the middle. Pointing at him with a shaking hand, the youth's face turned into a mask of hate and disgust, while loudly exclaiming, "But you are a white male!" Spat in his face and walked away with an obnoxious, smug smile on his face, sipping from his coffee cup, fingers whistling over his iPhone. The veteran wiped away the spit and sadly sighed. He could easily break that twig of a man in two, but he gathered that future failure in life would die in his own. There was no need for him to sully his hands, and moreover his family, his child, needed him. He continued asking, pleading, and begging the indifferent passerbys for change. Hours passed, and the cold, freezing wind brought obnoxious dark clouds full of snow. By then, the veteran had spent more than 16 hours out in the freezing cold, begging on the streets. In his soldier's hat, there was almost $20 worth of change. He picked himself up, and with his knees hurting, started walking towards the distant shrubs where his home was. A 3-mile walk awaited him, and as he was striding away in the darkness, the blizzard's strength increased. The veteran never reached his home that night. In the morning, after the blizzard had passed away, some old woman found his sign sticking from a heap of snow, and then his corpse frozen to death. Before the end, he was crawling, hand gripping the small bag of change, and stretched out in the direction of his house. It was just half a mile away. The veteran stood before a group of young kids, at least 1,000 strong, assembled at their colony's meeting hall. A sea of smiling faces and gleaming eyes, they all came to meet with him. To see a real veteran, a survivor of the Cirrus colony defense. His beautiful hazel green dress uniform had less and less free space for all his medals, and soon he would be forced to wear ribbons. For this occasion, however, his medals were there, and the young crowd was pointing at them, chatting about one or the other. The colonial militia was pretty generous. After all, the last time he'd seen action a few years ago after his discharge. The pirates who attacked his passenger ship were in for a last surprise after he unpacked his Springfield MF railgun and began sniping one after the other with deadly accuracy. They, of course, tried really hard to kill him, almost shooting his legs to pieces, and, as always, the colonial militia medics fixed him up in just a couple of days. The bill was covered fully by those grateful passengers who owed their life to his bravery and skill. But even if they didn't, he had plenty of credits saved. People pay well for the protection that their colonial militia units provided. Nobody skimped when it came to the defense of their loved ones and property. The veteran was lost in thought, and as one young man stood up, he focused his eyes on him. In excellent health, the youth's athletic build couldn't be ignored, even with the leather jacket that he wore. His eyes were shining with purpose when he spoke. "Sir, we're all grateful for your service. Can you tell us more about Cirrus? From your perspective, it must have been hell on earth, right?" The veteran smiled and leaned forward, his hands grasping the dress uniform's belt and answering back. "Not at all for me, no. But for the invaders, the slavers, and the kidnappers, it was hell. And suffered with their very lives they did for threatening the freedoms and peace of our citizens. The colonial militia is formed by you. It is you, all of you, who have unrestricted access and ownerships of all types of weapons. Standing together, the citizens of our imperial monarchy needed no overbearing government to tell us what to do. And when our liberties and lives are threatened, we can deal with the aggressors and invaders. There is nothing more perilous than brave men and women standing shoulder to shoulder, railgun in hand, facing those who intend to do them and their loved ones harm." He looked long and pointed at his medals. "This is a physical form of people's gratitude, and for me, for any professional soldier, it means lives saved. No matter what they bear against us, we, the citizens, can always strike back harder. They roll in with their tanks. We can have our own tanks, bigger and better than theirs. They stomp towards us with their Terran mecha. Our mecha pilots can and will walk all over their wrecked forms, laughing from the cockpits of our mecha. Spaceships, we got them too. And if we can't build them, our boys and gals from the Star Marine Corps will make sure that their own starships will service us after their murderous crew are all dead." The assembly hall roared with cheers as he remembered that all those youths were his to instruct in the art of life. They would, for a short time, become flesh of his flesh and blood of his blood. Just like his 6 children back on Cirrus Prime, he would care for them all and make sure that they knew how to protect their lives and land. The art of life meant that to protect yours and your loved ones' lives, one had to end the enemies. Nobody asked the slavers, pirates, and other scum to invade. That they did willingly, on their own, therefore sealing their destiny. If you like this short story, then please check out the Starshatter series. Starshatter, Twin Sons of Corellia, and Treads of Vengeance, from the author The Black Knight. He could be found on Patreon, as well as minds.com. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself, and farewell.